Well, I get to tell you the great adventures of Clarice in Garden Home, Oregon. I was about 10 years old, and it was about the time of the Second World War was going on. My mother and father, my dad, built a beautiful house for us in Garden Home. He worked at Montgomery Ward. He was a buyer for them, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. She had the four of us kids that we kept her busy. Then all of a sudden, there was more of a conscription for the men of America, because they needed more men on the front lines, I guess. But my dad was too old, so he was sent to the shipyards, and he worked over in the right off the Willamette River, I would imagine, is where the shipyards were. I can't remember. At any rate, he worked there. And then in I think it was 1946, the war ended. And all of the soldiers came home, and we all celebrated. And we were so grateful that the soldiers were coming home. But my dad, who was working for the shipyards at that time, because that was his gift to the nation, he was able to come home too. Well, about that time, then we ended up having to make a decision about our life. And my dad had built this beautiful house for us in Garden Home. It was a nice, sturdy, stable house. My two sisters had a bedroom to themselves, and my brother had a bedroom to himself, and I had a beautiful bedroom to myself too. The house was a nice, stable house, a beautiful home. We ended up moving to the farm because my dad decided he wanted to be a farmer. We moved to the farm on November 12th that year. It must have been about 1945. We had some relatives that said, well, you want to buy a farm? Well, we've got one just right around the corner from us. And why don't you look at that farm? And it was about 25 acres. And so they said, we'll teach you how to farm. So my dad said, okay. So he picked all of us kids up, and we moved to the farm on November 12th, 1945. They got a big old flatbed truck, and they loaded up all this beautiful furniture my mom and dad had collected. And we went on a grand adventure to the farm. And it was that afternoon, the winds came in, just like our southwester winds we have today here. And all of a sudden, it was a blustery old day. And this family that had told us to buy the farm, they said, well, come on over and have some soup with us. And so they fixed us a big pot of soup, and we had soup and bread that evening, which was fun. They built a fire in the fireplace, and it was warm and cozy. And then about 8, 9 o'clock, my mom and dad picked all of us kids up, stuffed us in the car, and we went over to the farm. And we went into the farm, and the farm house was an old house. It wasn't anything like the house that I grew up in. It was a house that was 100 years old. It was built, and it was four rooms basically. 2 bedrooms upstairs, a storage room downstairs where we put all our furniture, a family room for all of us to live in, and a kitchen kind of off to the side. We moved into that house that day, and the wind started to pick up. Right outside our big old house, there were these 2 massive fir trees, and they were on the north side of the house. And as you know, within our area, we get the southwester winds. And I can imagine that you are very much aware of our southwester winds when they come in and the storm comes in. Well, that southwester came in, and we had never experienced that before. We, as kids, we were all tucked in bed, and we were all tucked in bed that night. Mom came in, kissed us goodnight, and said that we were off on a grand adventure. And so we turned out the lights and we went to bed, and all of a sudden the wind started coming up, and the wind blew through those trees, and we could hear it. We could hear it. And then all of a sudden the wind came along, and it was one of those big gusts of wind, and it went woof, and it hit the house. And the thing is that we were balanced on 4 millstones, and the house just trembled. And we all just shook because we didn't know what was going to happen. And we kind of cringed and cuddled up in our covers. And then another one came. And that's the way the whole night went. We had a whole southwester wind. And we made it through the night, which is good. We lived there until I was 18 years old. And we had many southwesters. However, a number of years ago, we had the Columbus Day storm, and the house didn't stand. It blew over along with the barn. So it could have happened. In the meantime, we tried to make the farm work, and Dad tried to salvage the farm. The farm had not been cared for, and the soil was depleted, and all the berries that we had on the farm died or were diseased. So we ended up, Dad went back and got another job, and he worked in Hillsboro at a farm co-op. And that is, we lived there. We moved to Hillsboro, and that's where we spent a good share of the last year of my life. I lived on the farm until I was 18. Well, we ended up moving to Hillsboro, and Dad bought a house that looked just like the house that we had in Garden Home that he had built many years before. And all the furniture that we had put in this big storage room right off our living area was unpacked, and we put it back into our new house in Hillsboro, and it was just like going back when we were little kids. It was a beautiful house. But I want to say something else that is even more important than that, and that is that if you talk to my sister, she will tell you, and I have to agree with her, those number of years that we lived on the farm and we had nothing, we ended up losing everything, were some of the best years of our life. Because we ended up depending upon each other, and there were the 4 of us kids that grew up. My mother suffered a lot, but she ended up giving up a lot of her life for us. But we kids, we had the time of our lives on the farm. I raised cattle. We raised cattle and chickens and all sorts of wonderful things, and grew up and learned how to appreciate life. And the thing is, we didn't just give up and do nothing. My brother became a PhD in chemistry, and I got a good degree, and my sisters, they all got degrees too. And so we all moved on and were successful in life. And so it was a positive. It was not a negative in life. Jack, even when the bad things happen in your life, good can come out of it. And then you can make good come out of it. And don't be downtrodden just because you don't have money, and you don't have the pretty clothes, and you don't have the fancy car, and you just work at it, and you become the best that you can be for the family and for the society, and that is very important.